Hello. I think everybody has been thanked already, but I've never been on a conference that was so well unorganized. This is a strange subject. You would think that grammar has nothing to do with script, and as far as structure is concerned, everything is there already. You have the Meshk albumleri, but on the other hand, if you take a good look at them, like this is a well-known Meshk album, Halim Effendi, in the sequence of, actually it gives only combinations of two letters, which is really not enough to glean the whole system. And in these pages of letter blocks that start with A, B, Alif, B, and so on, they go to Kaf, and from Kaf they don't continue to Lam. They skip the Lam. But the Lam has specific shapes, so that you can't find them. So more examples, if this, yeah. So here you have, so only digraphs. This is some Shauki Effendi, Kazaskar, Mustafa Izzet Effendi, they all jump straight from Kaf to Lam. That's just an example how all kinds of unexpected glitches if you go into this subject. Actually, we found the Iraqi calligrapher, Hashim Muhammad, and he starts with Kaf and then continues with Lam. And actually, he has, as you can see, he does not only give groups of two letters, but you see at the first on the top row is actually four letters without dots, which is also interesting, and that is called rasm in Arabic, and I call that archigraphemes as a funny Latin technical term, the abstract base letter. And so that is why you need more than the traditional descriptions. Then why would you use, let's say this is the little table of contents of what I want to walk you through. First, the question is, why would language concepts apply on a script study? Well, first, like language, the Ottoman or the Islamic script in particular is full with rules, but they're not explicitly formulated, so in a way they are intuitive. Then, more importantly, what the sender formulates is received and understood on the other end. So it has, like a communication protocol, that characteristic in common. There are all kinds of mannerisms, and like you have idioms in language. If you don't use the proper idiom, you're still understood, but somehow it gives a signal that you're not really into this particular cultural group, which is a feature of language and a feature of Islamic script. And on the other hand, in terms of communication, you can deviate to a certain extent from the rules and the protocols and stay understood. There is, of course, a breaking point. And there is also a formal and an informal way of doing it. And this is why I would call formal, I would call calligraphy, and informal I would just call writing. And in the translation of my lecture, it was called Hat Kaideleri, the rules of script. And I think that's a very good formula. It's not the rules of calligraphy. And because calligraphy is Hat Sanatı in Turkish, the art of script. So in Western publications, and also in Arabic and publication, when the moment the word hat is used, they jump to the conclusion that it must be calligraphy. But the calligraphy is just the artistic dimension of a script that is also very pragmatic. Now, this next step is some ideas of how you can think about it. The first general observation is that our mind is not really it is something that evolved, and it never evolved for logic or systematic reasoning or even precise registration. Because you're looking here at a series of concentric circles and your mind is not able to see them. I'm helping you. Your mind is completely turned off the grid here. And that is something that is relevant in this context. And I'm showing now another system where our mind simply stops processing. This is a military rank, and that's a Roman number 1. The rank is a second lieutenant, a first lieutenant, a captain. Now, the next rank up is a major, and by the time you're at the lieutenant colonel, you can no longer in one glance say with certainty how many stars there are. And if you continue to, a brigadier, a major general, lieutenant general, you go up a full general. If you would have a chap with, a pile of stars on his shoulder, nobody would be able to make out for certain what rank he has. Whereas we have barcode readers who can, in a flash, read far more complex information. Our minds are very, very limited. So in practice, up to 3 is being done with 3 stars, and then the 4 are condensed into one little bar. And so now it has been reduced to consumables that our mind can take in. And the same is true for the Latin numerals. And in this context, I have this little image. It's a little small, but these little red bastards are the undotted letters ba in a simplified Arabic script. And the point I'm making is that if you have a long word where there are noons, tes, and bes, your mind is not able to process it. So back to applying linguistic concepts, observation. You're not telling people how to speak, you're listening and trying to understand how it works. So this is to clarify the concept of grammar, and that it has nothing to do with Nazism and that sort of thing. It's a form of science. And now back to the be. There is in the Islamic script, and clearly the theme today is the Nas script. and the history of the Nas script is the struggle to mechanize it. And that's a 15th century struggle. Typography is 15th century information technology. And today that is a past station. There is no need to keep thinking in terms of 15th century technology. We have now far more abstract information technology. So we try to make a fresh start. So I'm giving you in parallel a growing group of the letter be, with or without dots. And you see without script grammar, which is the main form today, typography, which struggles to get it in, and script grammar, the way we do it with computer typography. And in parallel, I give the transliteration in a capital letter, which summarizes all the elements in Arabic that depend on a little tooth, a denticle, plus some kind of a pattern around it. So I'm now moving through it quickly and highlighting where you see successful emulation and where the emulation already fails. Like there's a very specific shape that looks like a cut U that can be observed in manuscripts, and that is not found in the mechanical reproduction. And there's a very good reason for it, because the number of sorts would explode if you would try to cover that additional detail. So there was already simplification even in the best typefaces. And now we reach a point that you would think, this is over the top. Why would you have so many of these basic elements lined up? And on the other hand, you can find the word exists. It means with my 2 cases of evidence, bitath, bitaina. So I have evidence. Now, this is basic shaping. In Arabic, there is also the possibility to extend letters. Not all the time everywhere, but within rules you can do it. The vertical extension is part of the automatic basic rule, but the horizontal extension is at will. The scribe can decide to elongate. And in this particular example, it does not affect the rule that decides when to raise vertically. But if you move the choice to another position, you will see that it affects the mechanism of the raising of the other tooth. The rationale, as I understand it, is that in order to keep the number of denticles legible, keeping in mind the fact that we can really catch only a limited number of identical shapes. So by raising them, they're making it a non-Bae. And in the rule system, when two denticles in the class of Bae or whatever are caught between two non-denticles, they take this low U shape. And then all of a sudden it becomes very regular and understandable how it works. And those who have ever tried to make a font understand that this is impossible to do with conventional font technology. But this is the only way to get the Nasr typeface right. Now, how do we know this? Well, there have been many texts shown today, but for research it is very efficient to choose the Quran. The Quran has the disadvantage that it is in Arabic, which is a limited morphology. If you take Ottoman Turkish, for instance, you have a mixture of Arabic and Persian and Turkish grammar. And each grammar has its own combination of letters. So each language by nature doesn't use all the possible combinations. So if you use only one language to analyze a script, you will never find certain combinations. But anyway, the advantage is that in the Ottoman Empire, the Nasr script was very organized, very regulated, and mass-produced in terms of Qurans all over the empire. And the next thing is you try to find a phrase in the Quran that has a good concentration of the problem, so that you just walk into a library, pull out all the Ottoman Qurans, open them all on the same page, and you have a massive amount of comparative information. You see I highlighted in my transliteration so that you really can see how concentrated this is in this example. It's chapter 40, ayah 40, verse or surah 11. Surah 40, ayah 11. Here you have the real thing, and here you see something that looks practically the same. It's probably even by the same calligrapher. It's very hard to see how this is different from the other one. I'll help you. It's not the same. So it's really a different piece of work. And I'm highlighting how within one calligraphic style there is a certain system that the same abstract letter, the same grapheme, has actually an option of 1, 2, 3, or sometimes 4 totally different letters that have the same meaning. But once you apply the letter, a different rule system kicks in, and you have to, in terms of programming, you have to do a totally different job. Here are some more examples. So this is to give you an impression of what you're catching if you follow my advice, walk into a library that has well stocked with Ottoman Qurans, pull them all out on the same page, and choose a page that has a concentration of examples of the problem that you're studying. But I'm focusing now on this word, just to show you that the ascending number of denticles that I showed in the beginning and the jumping around of the raised element is really a fact. You see, this is taken from an actual instance. The elongation that is, the short elongation on the top example causes a different choice in which one to dissimulate by going up vertically. So what is happening here is that you have been listening all day to descriptions of projects that tried to reproduce this kind of writing with metal. And what we try to do is to forget about metal, go back to the sources, and try to understand how the system works. Before even thinking of simplification, first get the whole system out, and then the next step is how to simplify. Now, another linguistic method or concept is contrastive analysis. And now I'm going to give you the meaning of this phrase. So in English it says, they will say, you caused us to die twice and to make us live twice. So we confessed our sins. Is there any way out? But what I find in one of them is, you caused us to die twice, so we confessed our sins. The scribe was distracted. And then he realizes his mistake, he strikes it out, and then he continues, and you made us live twice, and then, so we confessed our sins. Is there a way out? Now he's back on track. Now, what does this look like in a manuscript? It looks like this. So I'll give you the Arabic now. So قالوا ربنا أمتنا اثنتين فاعترفنا بذنوبنا. Sorry. وأحييتنا اثنتين فاعترفنا بذنوبنا فهل إلى السبيل. And for those who read Arabic, you see it's all there. Now, what strikes me here is not the error. This is a minimal pair. I have on one page the word fa'atarafna. Forget the strikeout, because it is at the wrong place, but it's perfect. And you have fa'atarafna again, in a completely different form. The normal argument, it was a different calligrapher, it was a different moment in time, it was different ink, different paper, all these, all the noise has been frozen. It's the same calligrapher, the same text, the same everything. And still, for some reason, he writes the exact very word in a different shape. And with our model of Naskh, we can actually reproduce this, including the strikeout, but that is a standard function. So this is the same in a, let's say, stylized or typographic form. It is the average Ottoman shape. And we can now isolate what triggered the difference. The two segments, actually the three segments. You have fa-alif, and at the end you have fa and the generic ba, which is noon here, and an alif. The one that I'm interested in is the segment that has the white. The ra is a different letter. It's the same grapheme, it's a different letter, and therefore it causes the whole letter block to shape in a different way. So there's one deliberate change, the white one is a deliberate change, and all the other ones are automatic consequences of the deliberate change. So primary and secondary form. And this observation produces a minimal pair. You have now an object of study and of evidence how the system works. And then contrastive analysis is like an accumulation of such minimal pairs. And I give you another one. I searched the Quran with a special search algorithm for a word that has a high concentration of denticles. And here is an actual one. So you see already the computer model that I showed doesn't have any of the information that I'm looking for. But here you see I caught one. And this is another one, and I caught another one. And I actually caught a couple of other ones, and you can do this with hundreds of Qurans. And what you get from this is that they keep changing, but still every one of them is different, and they're all Naskh. But there must be a way to simplify this. This cannot be as complex. It's like looking at a cash receipt with all kinds of values that you paid for your whatever it is. And you're not trying to memorize all these different amounts. You know it's built out of digits. It's a simple system. And that's the case here too. So for those who are interested, it is the phrase la tunabbi'annahum with two shaddas. And this is another example of the raw material of the research. And this raw material you can organize according to a pattern that is called competence. And competence is what grammar is about. It describes the collective shared idea of how a system works. And I'm using a metaphor because I see a kind of a deep analogy with classical music in the West. This is the Alaturka. I think it's played often on Turkish radio, like da 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 da. Now every piano player can turn this in a unique artwork without changing a single note of this composition, because there is a tolerance for deviation in terms of tempo and expression. And the visual equivalent is this. This is an email that was sent out by IRSICA, the Institute for Islamic Research in Istanbul, and it was part of a contest in the Nasr style, which is today's subject. And this is a winning piece, but there were 7 or 8 winning pieces. So the other winning piece looks like this. This is Nasr. It meets all the requirements of Nasr, but it's completely different. And it's totally analogous to a Mozart symphony conducted by a different conductor. This is another winning piece. This is also a winner. And so that's the general background. That's what I mean with competence, and the differences between the individuals is called performance in linguistics. So you have a competence is vertically, you see this, the words that have the most denticles in this Quran passage cut out of context and put in a frame where horizontally you follow the performance of a specific calligrapher, and vertically you catch the way they deal with these letter groups. And what you see is some of them are very similar, but the word fa'atarafna, that is the third column from the left, and the fourth from the right, has considerable differences, but that is mainly because of additional choices, like the choice to elongate or the choice to use another letter for the same grapheme. But this is only 4, but if you do this with 40 or 400, you get a more precise image of the structure, and that's actually what Miriam and I have been doing over the years. So to keep you focused on, this is the phrase, and these are the catches. I zoom in on, again, 3 words, of which one reoccurs twice. Because the word 2 times, you caused us to die 2 times, you brought us back to life 2 times, which is thnatain. So you see here's thnatain, and then ahyaitana thnatain, you brought us back to life twice. And I'm just showing you that even this one, that has a completely different appearance, still with a certain tolerance, falls in the class of nasr, because the main features are still present. It's like a funny pronunciation of a language, but still clearly the same language. So this shows how consistent the style is, and again, in the metaphor of musical performance, how individual it is within a certain margin for tolerance for deviation. And this is my example with the error. So there are even more. So to get them all together on board, they're all from different manuscripts. And now, this is the way the top one is the Leipzig Quran from the 1840s or 50s, which has been, till the 1920s, the standard reference Quran for studying Quranic Arabic in the West. And in a way, the flip side of the Times New Roman coin in a standard Windows environment is an Arabic script that has nothing to do with Times New Roman, and as I would argue, it also has nothing to do with Arabic. Because all the Arabic scripts, the middle one is the Nasr script, which is today's subject. Below it, you see the Roca script, and at the bottom, you see an example of Nastaliq script. And the Middle Eastern scripts have a different contextual variant for practically every denticle in this sequence. So the whole paradigm of initial, middle, final, and unconnected form is a fiction of Western Orientalism. So now I expanded the same table with more catches, and now you see that the strikeout form on the middle column for fa'atarafna has a whole series of brothers in other manuscripts, and the one that was entered in the second instance, you find also in other manuscripts. So they work all with existing repertoire of combinations. But from it, at the bottom line, you can conclude there is a rule system. From all these things are the product of the same rule system. There are no exceptions. And in green now you see our computer model, where we let's start with with this line with all the variations. Our forms were actually derived from the handwriting of Hashim Muhammad al-Khattab al-Baghdadi. He has a very small number of examples, but we interpolated, we interpreted his writing and built a system that covers every imaginable word, how we calculate that he would write it. That is the decotype Naskh font, or the Tasmim Naskh, as you call it in your publication. But there is one detail that I want to draw your attention to. So because Hashim has more than 2 letters, he has here an example with 4, and it shows you 2 denticles caught between 2 non-denticles. And in this paradigm, the long form of the elongation of the group counts as a non-denticle as well. So it triggers that particular form. So in our typeface, it works like this. And if you look superficially, they're completely and madly irregular and different, but they're all built like Lego bricks from a very small repertoire and rules. And actually, this particular double form between 2 non-denticles was only spotted by Mohendesian, which is one of today's heroes, the man with the best stroke modulation, but also the man with the best information about the script, although he uses it only once. I've not been able to spot more instances. So simplification kicks in quite quickly, and for the right reasons, because you really need to multiply your collection of sorts to keep this without errors. In our model, you see, we are with a computer, it's very easy to maintain it. So that is the. And then I have another aspect that I want to point out. In modern fonts, you have what is called tatwil, in elongation. It's like a straight bar that you can add to any letter. In Arabic calligraphy or in Arabic script rules, you have elongation in the sense of kashida, which is never a straight line, but a curve. You cannot put it everywhere. And if you put it anywhere, it triggers a completely different behavior of the surrounding denticles, which I started with. But if you look more careful, you see that it's built out of a very small set of totally predictable Lego bricks. So again, what looks like maddeningly complicated and unpredictable is like mathematics. And that's why we were able to program it. And therefore, these nominal values of the words roll out in our software as endless lists of possible shapings with the additional parameters mixed, turned on, turned off, so that all of a sudden it becomes a very powerful model of approximation of the thinking that was behind this whole manuscript edition. So that is what you do with competence performance. Then the whole thing results in script modeling, and practically speaking, it means that we're working now on a new typesetting system for Royal Brill publishers in Leiden in the Netherlands, which is browser-based. It works with a harfbuzz, and here is the equivalent of the paragraph formatter in InDesign. You can indicate here, it's a preset editing, online preset editing environment, where you can set, well, this was my default value. I take a demo set that has already been changed. So now the whole text starts to look differently. and I'm walking you through the values that were changed. We have a sliding control for every relevant letter category, and these letter categories are the archigrapheme. Here you see in dimmed green, you see the candidates, and in dark green, you see the ones that were actually changed. And there is a percentage for each category that you can indicate. So basically, this enables the typesetter to create his personal fingerprint in a nasr text like the calligraphers had in their old manuscripts. Here you see another parameter, this the swash parameter, where 66% is set to non-swash, and the remaining 34% is spread evenly over short, middle, and long swash. And you see the swash actually extends under the following word, which is also a technical thing that it is conventionally done with kerning, but you need billions of kerning pairs in order to deal with this kind of text. So instead we have a spacing technology where we can space horizontally between the words, and you see that already the overlap disappears if you give that a value, but you can also space vertically, which would block any overlap. You can do that also internally, so you can pull the words more apart. And you can also space vertically internally, which means that you're preventing any kind of overlap. And if you turn it off again, you are back in the design that I'm showing. And this is the default value that we have in the font. So the fonts are designed with a spacing default, which then connects to an interface where you can change the spacing defaults and create these effects. And now the next thing that colors up is internal elongation, or kashida, which again is given a value, no kashida for 56%, and then the remainder is equally distributed between various degrees of length, and you see in the colors where they are. Another one is, if you like that, the rotation of the dots. You can indicate that normally you would put that on 0 for normal text, but if you really want to play with it, you can turn it on, and you see. Then another feature that is that the undotted characters can theoretically be marked by a miniature of themselves to confirm that the dot was not omitted accidentally, but on purpose, to prevent people from corrupting the text. A famous example is Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rahim means merciful. If you put a dot under it, it becomes Rajim, and you would then make it the one that should be stoned to death, which is of course not something you want, so you put a little miniature ha in there to make sure that nobody's going to add the dot. That is, we translate that as mimicry. It's called alamat al-ihmal in Arabic. Okay. Then you have, the result is actually a text file, which for all the visual operations notes a value. These values are read by the typesetting software, which I will show in a moment. For instance, we can also do this with Nastaliq. I'm showing you quickly that things that cannot be done with any conventional Nastaliq, with any conventional technology, elongation, distribution of elongation, overlap, that's what you call script modeling. Then it produces text technology. These are Quran pages. They have a prescribed amount of text. Left is a static technology. On the right is a dynamic technology, like the one that we are working on. So page after page, the amount of text changes, and we can milk the possibilities for each individual word in such a way that the text stays balanced on the page, even if there's too much or too little text. Then practical results. Well, Miriam is going to show later the printed edition, 5 kilos of Mus'haf, the Omani Quran, which is made with the website. So the website is actually a printing system, including the marginalia, and it comes in 2 editions, a blue one and a gold one, and we brought the golden one. A totally different environment is the Princeton Geniza project, where they are mapping manuscripts found in Cairo. They have been working on them since the 80s, and I think they just upgraded it to the Amiri typeface, but they're trying to transcribe this. And we made a proposal for them to do this in a more modern way. You see that there's damage on these parchments, or papers, I think they are, papyrus. So where there's a ring, they have actually inferred the missing text between square brackets. There's another way. You can also do it like this. This is the same text where we have the missing text, but we have a sliding control for gray shades on the left top, and we can turn it on 100% or on 0 or on a modest percentage, so you can actually play with the visibility of the reconstructed text. Then another aspect is they are undotted, so we have a check that says archigrapheme. So if let me go back one step, this is the text, how it is entered conventionally. The Unicode standard has no concept of undotted text and forces people to falsify the information, because most of the manuscript text had no dots, and we have a single check, and that takes away all the dots. Once the dots are gone, you cannot always confidently collate them into words, because sometimes you can make different words out of a different way of combining the letter groups. This is you get an idea what we can do, and we can also change all these values that I just showed work now. Could be a book, could be anything, from the various styles which you can see change on top, the typefaces. We have even a Rocca. This all works. This is the new type technology that we're working on. Practical results of a final image. I've never seen this particular combination, but it is potentially in the design, and if I walk through the menu in the right way from the Musaf Muscat, here is the way it shapes automatically. I select it, which by mouse over, it drops a menu. I go one step up here in the right column to the default form. I walk to the nearest alternation form, double click, and hey presto, it is the form that I saw. The same script grammar, not the exact same form. And here you see that it completely changes the behavior of everything in order to keep the balance. And so this is a computer model of this kind of writing. And that's all.